When you drink your tea, just drink your tea. Enjoy drinking your tea. Please don't drink your suffering, your despair, your projects. This is very important. Otherwise, you can't nourish yourself. There are things that you have seen but not very clearly. You can use the power of concentration to experience a breakthrough and see deeply the nature of what is there. Perhaps you have some difficulty, depression, fear, or despair, and you want to look deeply into the nature of your affliction to be able to transform it. To do this, you need a lot of concentration. Concentration can help us look deeply into the nature of reality and bring about the kind of insight that can liberate us from suffering. There are many kinds of concentration we can cultivate. Through concentration on impermanence, we become aware that everything is constantly changing. We may die tomorrow. We should do everything we can to make our loved ones happy today. Tomorrow may be too late. With concentration on non-self, the reality that we do not have a separate self, we become aware that suffering not only in us, but also in the other person. Not only do we suffer, but so do our children, our partners, our friends, and our colleagues. When we develop concentration on interbeing, on the connectedness of all things, we see that if we make them suffer, they will make us suffer in return. Concentration on the nature of impermanence, non-self, and interbeing can help us realize great breakthroughs that will bring us insight. Concentration on impermanence and non-self leads to the insight of impermanence and non-self. Impermanence is not an idea, not a notion, but an insight. Many of us try desperately to hold on to some notion of stability or permanence. We become anxious when we hear the teaching of impermanence. But impermanence is not just negative. Impermanence can be very positive. Everything is impermanent, including injustice, poverty, pollution, and global warming. In our lives, there is misunderstanding. There is violence, there is conflict, there is despair. But these things are also impermanent. And because they are impermanent, they can be transformed if we have insight into how to live in the present moment. However, sometimes we forget about impermanence. Although intellectually we realize that everything is impermanent, we forget that one day our loved ones will get sick and die. We don't remember that we ourselves have to die someday. We have a tendency to think that we will live forever, and therefore we do not have the insight we need to live beautifully and really cherish our loved ones. For many of us, the excruciating pain we feel at the death of a beloved one is not entirely because we miss him, but more because we regret that while our beloved was alive, we didn't have time for him. We didn't care wholeheartedly. If we know how to live according to the insight of impermanence, we will not make many mistakes. We can be happy right now. We can love our beloved, care for her, and make her happy today. And we won't run toward the future, losing our life, which is available only in the present moment. When the Buddha spoke about impermanence, he was speaking of insight. He was not being pessimistic, but only reminding us that life is precious, that we have to treasure every moment of life. Concentrating on impermanence in this way will bring us the insight of impermanence. With this kind of insight, we don't allow ourselves to be carried away by despair, anger, or negativity, because our insight tells us exactly what to do and what not to do to change the situation. With impermanence, everything is possible. Without insight, we think of power as something we gain for ourselves and ourselves alone. But another insight we can cultivate is the insight of non-self. Non-self doesn't mean that you don't exist. It means you are not a completely separate entity. A lot of our suffering is born from the discrimination between self and others, and our notion of a separate self. Suppose you are a parent. Looking into your child, you will see that your son, your daughter, is your continuation. Just as a corn plant is the continuation of a kernel of corn, the child is a continuation of the parent. The Father is there in every cell of the Son. The Father and Son are not exactly one person, but they are not exactly two different people either. If the Father can see this, He touches His nature of non-self. If the Son suffers, the Father suffers, and vice versa. So, getting angry at your son is getting angry at yourself. Getting angry at your father is getting angry at yourself. This is very clear. When you are able to touch your nature of non-self, when you no longer see a distinction between you and your daughter or son, your anger will vanish. When you are in a power struggle, if you know how to meditate on non-self, you will know what to do. You can stop your own suffering and the suffering of the other people in the struggle. You know that his anger is your anger, his suffering is your suffering, and his happiness is your happiness. In Buddhism, there is a kind of wisdom called the wisdom of non-discrimination. Non-discrimination is one element of true love. I am right-handed, so I do most things with my right hand, brushing my teeth, inviting the bell to sound, writing calligraphy. I have written all my poems with my right hand. But my right hand is never proud of itself. It never says, "Left hand, you are good for nothing. I have to do everything by myself." And my left hand does not have an inferiority complex. It never suffers. It's wonderful. My right and left hands are always at peace with each other. They collaborate in a perfect way. This is the wisdom of no self that is alive in us. One day I was hammering a nail in the wall to hang a picture. I was not very skillful, and instead of hitting the nail, I hit my finger. Immediately, my right hand put down the hammer and took care of my left hand. My right hand never said, "Left hand, I'm taking good care of you. You should remember that." And my left hand did not say, "Right hand, you have made me suffer. I want justice. Give me that hammer." My left hand never thinks like that. So the wisdom of non-discrimination is there in us. If we make use of it, there will be peace in our family, in our community. If Hindus and Muslims in India use their wisdom of non-discrimination, there will be peace. If Israelis and Palestinians realize their wisdom of non-discrimination, there will be no war. If Americans and Iraqis see that they are brothers and sisters, two hands of the same body, they will not continue to kill each other. We all need to cultivate this kind of wisdom. With this insight, we can undo our own fear, suffering, separation, and loneliness, and we can help others do the same. Insight comes from understanding. There may be elements of understanding in us already, but if we don't have time to be mindful and concentrate, insight won't manifest in us. We need to create the kind of environment where mindfulness and concentration become easy. It's like preparing the soil so that the flower we plant can sprout. Insight is the kind of understanding you obtain after you've been mindful. If you allow yourself to get lost in regrets about the past and worries about the future, it is difficult for insight to grow, and it will be more difficult to know what right action to take in the present. It is because of ignorance that we suffer. When we begin to touch insight, we are deeply in touch with reality, and there is no longer any fear. There is compassion, there is acceptance, there is tolerance. This is why we talk about insight as a kind of superpower. If you take the time to look at reality using the insights of impermanence and non-self, you will have a breakthrough that will liberate you from your suffering and your difficulties.